back to another episode of the Halftime Podcast. It's been a long time. We've had a long break, but now, due to circumstances beyond, I think, everyone's belief, we are sort of hello and welcome back to find ourselves in a position where we are back podcasting on. Would you have it, all the footballing action that's happening? So with me today on the panel, I have Charlie Pumfrey. Hello, Charlie.
Good afternoon, Danny. It's nice to be back with you.
It's nice to be back with you as well, Charlie. How are you keeping?
Oh, going a bit crazy at this point. I feel like it's a weird world we live in.
It really is, and we'll discuss that very shortly. Joining Charlie, we have S.A. Agboye. How are you, S.A.?
I'm fine, thank you. Good afternoon, chaps.
Good afternoon. How are you? What have you done with your life, S.A., without football at the moment?
I've actually done quite a bit, actually. I've actually been doing things here and there, helping people, stuff like that.
Good.
Nice. Man of the people, S.A.
Exactly. We'll go into more depth very, very shortly. So, gents, I guess the first place for us to really sort of start off with is obviously the decision by the football authorities, more so for us domestically, the FA, and obviously the Premier League and the EFL, cancelling basically football across the board from the professional game to the grassroots level. As a result, we are footballless. So, Charlie, what's your thoughts on that decision? Is it the right decision, do you feel, by the authorities?
I think it's, well, to use a term that was used by the Prime Minister yesterday, that it's a draconian measure, but it's one that really was probably necessary. We're talking about the health and well-being of fans and supporters, and that covers such a wide range of ages, demographics, that you can't afford to have now, really. Even having games behind closed doors. I mean, you saw how that went with the NBA. I think that really set... The American sports have kind of taken the lead on this. That they turned around and said... I mean, a week before over here, and our numbers for infections and things were getting above theirs. But they were like, okay, we're going to stop our sports and put the health and well-being of everyone above the sport, which is really... As disappointing as it is, I think we'd all love to be in a position right now where we're talking about not a tight title race at all. We'd probably be talking about a new champion being crowned, but to have this situation now where we're without football, but I think for the right reasons. I think it was a good decision that was made, probably a little late, but a good decision nonetheless.
Okay, let's bring in S.A. then. S.A., do you share those views?
Yeah, I think it's for the best, really. Like, health comes first before anything else.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And is there anything else that the FA or the Premier League could have done maybe earlier or even now to just sort of prevent it from spreading anymore?
Well, it all crept up on us by surprise, really. And we didn't expect it to get that big.
Yeah.
And in fact, this moment reminds me when... well, actually, it doesn't remind me, because sorry, let me start it again. I've been reading up about when SARS broke out in China back in 2003.
Okay.
And it was around the time where the Women's World Cup was meant to be in China. But at such short notice, that got switched to USA that year. And that meant that the World Cup in 2007, I think that was earmarked for USA, was held in China.
It is interesting. This is sort of unprecedented times, really. We would not experience this before, certainly in my lifetime. It's quite interesting. I felt like this. I don't know what you guys felt. Obviously, my background being a coach, being a referee, in the grassroots game, I kind of felt something like this was going to be introduced. So I was kind of expecting, at the time we were recording, we were on a Wednesday, so I was kind of expecting probably by that weekend maybe your last round of games, and that was it. I wasn't expecting so sudden. which is good. I'm pleased that they did. But yeah, I think they've come to the right decision. Um, Charlie, do you feel, because obviously you've had experiences within coaching at grassroots level, and I believe you're still coaching. Or maybe not at the moment.
No, definitely I still am. So it's been. Sorry to take on from your question there about how the grassroots is kind of responding. I coach an under-7s team, and we had a game this weekend just gone, and he didn't really get a sense that that would be the last game of the season. I mean, me and the coach I coach with, we were both of the opinion that okay, as long as I think a lot of it came from what was guidance from above, and I think that was trickled all the way up in the way that the clubs didn't want to make a decision for themselves, the counties didn't really want to make a decision for themselves. It was the FA that ultimately had to hand down that sort of decision and go, okay, this is our guidance, and we would say, look, don't play games, don't train. I mean, we're now indefinitely suspending our training sessions and matches. And I think, a lot of it may be the handling of that and the handling of... The problem is it has to trickle down quite a distance, doesn't it? From top to bottom, from decision makers in the FA to coaches like, well, you're a little bit higher the tree than me, but coaches like you and me, to have that decision given to them, okay, what is going on? This is the constant update. It was probably quite well managed, given how quickly that change needed to be brought in. But we can always look back and go, oh, why wasn't this done then, and why wasn't this done at that point? We have to kind of hope that the things are being dealt with at the right level, and I think even though it's a little strong, I think a lot of the things are being dealt with in the right way.
I feel this conversation that we're having in regards to the grassroots side, this is something we spoke off air about, but we're going to explore in a future episode anyway. Certainly now that we've got the time, given that there's no football on, we'll certainly explore it, and I'll look to bring in maybe Harry. We'll get Harry involved as well. I think there's a lot of different opinions at the grassroots game. Certainly, just very briefly before we move on, I was scheduled to ref a game on a Sunday, last Sunday just gone, and I mean, I got halfway there. I'm walking halfway there, and then I get a text saying that the game's been called off because the other team can't field. They can't field enough players due to the virus. So I feel like, I know, because obviously you're not inside of London, and maybe it's different with how it's being handled and the situation in London, but there's certainly a concern. So I'm pleased in that sense that they've finally taken action, and they're finally sort of taking it out of the hands of the leagues and the counties, because I mean, as I'm sure you've probably seen, they're not willing to make that decision lightly.
No, not at all.
Okay, so we've already heard a bit about SA, what you've been up to without football. How was Saturday 3 p.m. for you, SA? What did you do?
Oh, I can barely remember what I did yesterday.
Well, I mean, you must have a very eventful life indoors then. I mean, I don't know about you, Charlie. I was doing flat packing. I was assembling a TV stand. That's what I did with my Saturday. SA, did you do anything as exotic as that?
No.
I can see why SA can't remember. Can't blame that. If you've
Charlie,
not done a lot, hard to describe.
Yeah, fair enough. Charlie, what did you do with your 3 p.m. void?
See, yeah, my job kind of entails a slightly wider range of, although I'm not allowed to talk much about it, but a wider range of the football sort of football world. So my Saturday was still spent working, but in slightly more interesting ways, let's say. With less football to be looked at, there was some more interesting things being looked at, if it's the easy way to put. So, but yeah, I mean, other than that, it's without football, it's the constant looking and scrolling through. I find myself now looking at other sports, trying to get my fill there. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the memes going around Twitter of people celebrating the bowling. That's always fun.
Yeah, I mean, how long does that last, though? I mean, how long
Oh,
does these other sports last?
well, this is the
I
thing. I
saw
mean,
all those memes, but
yeah, I mean the thing is, every sports, no one is untouched by this. I mean, you look at I know we're a football podcast, but if you look at other industries that are operating in a similar way to football, you look at the
yeah,
sort of the cinema industry. Cinemas are closing, films are being pushed back by like a whole year. But hundreds of millions of pounds is being potentially lost because of what's going on here, and I think it should affect everyone. It doesn't affect everyone equally, if that makes sense. So
mm,
if you look at certain sports, so when you look at American football right now, viewership on that is really good because it's not on at the moment, because it's a really popular time of the season there, because it's the off season, because there's stuff going on that isn't people in a stadium. You look at the intrigue that's now being brought around the rest of the game, the interest that's being
yeah.
brought to that, the things that aren't on the field. I think that's become, people are trying to drill into it as much as possible. And I think
Yeah,
that's just the way it will
yeah.
go. I mean, if the summer transfer window starts early, for example, or I mean, if it starts late, we're in a completely different conversation, and I'm sure we'll have that in a separate podcast. I mean, yeah, interest is going to go through the roof.
There's
People are going to go crazy.
plenty of those podcasts to come. There certainly is.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just actually on that then, you said about the interest in the other sides of the game. You've got obviously people all over Twitter and social media sort of mentioning about documentaries and the interest in like rerunning Masters football on Sky Sports or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah, what's I'd love to get your verdicts, both of you, as to whether there's an appetite for this kind of thing. Given obviously, as I say, there's no football on, so surely people wanna digest their football content in some form. So, SA, is there any types of digital or visual or content that you used to enjoy that you'd like them to rerun?
Hmm. Visual. I think there's like many out there, but I can't quite put a finger on a specific one.
Okay, that's fine. So, what about you, Charlie? You got anything like goal
I
or
mean, that's where I was going. I mean, you've
yeah?
jumped the gun on me there, but yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we'd start to see that film popping up, the second one, and for the love of God, please don't show the third one.
Let's just pretend that film doesn't exist.
Oh, it's just I
I
hope.
think most people do.
Oh, it's so bad. But yeah, I mean, we can have our review of Goal 3 at some point, the film that broke me as a child. And I think we'll start to see, like you say, the Masters the Masters football coming back. The reruns that over social media, you see clubs are getting pretty desperate for content now. I
Yeah,
mean, you see teams. I saw Plymouth Argyle play their game at the weekend and last night over Football Manager, and I'm sure we can lead on to a little bit more of a conversation about that specific a game. But people are just really looking. I mean, playing noughts and crosses between two sides. I know Southampton were desperate for someone to get involved on Saturday.
a
Yeah, people
typical
are being.
Norwich no-show.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't great. Yeah, I forget. Yeah. Norwich didn't particularly perform there. Don't want to draw any more long
Well, I mean that
term.
wouldn't be the first time, but carry on.
But I mean, yeah, if you look at getting my fix, I mean, I've been pretty addicted to Football Manager ever since, well, for years, and I think the fact that that's now, I mean, at the time of recording, the minute we went up, Football Manager announced that game would be free for a week for anyone to play. I think that's people are just going to have to look at different ways of getting that same feeling, and I think that will lead to digital sports. I mean, esports is probably going to really blossom in this time because I mean you can play that from your own house. Look at what Leighton Orient are putting together.
Yeah,
That's
just on that, just on the point about Leighton Orient. So what do you make of that? The big tournament that Leighton Orient have set up. See that?
Um.
Yeah, good man.
Oh yeah. Is it that one they're doing with Dream Team?
I think they've distanced themselves from that. I mean, because they had the Dream Team logo on a graphic, and it led to I think 4 or 5 teams pulling out because of the connotations that come along with Dream Team and their established the company that they're established by. And again, this is all allegedly, so I don't want to step into a different world without getting in too much trouble. But yeah, I think they've stripped that away now because Dream Team sponsor the front of the shirt for Leyton Orient. I think they felt the obligation to put Dream Team on the graphic because I guess the Sun pay a lot of money for their sponsorship of Leyton Orient, so they probably wanted to give them some bang for their buck.
Okay, right.
Yeah. But what do you make of that? Good idea, I say.
I find it really interesting actually, and it will captivate like football fans in a different way.
Do you feel, as someone who obviously used to do a lot of social media stuff, do you feel that it's this kind of situation is forcing teams to be more creative on their social media?
Yes, definitely, and I think that online content will be booming more than ever now.
So if you're a social media guy, you're this is your real time to make your money. Then I'm guessing then, SA.
Definitely.
Okay, so we'll have to keep you under wraps so that no one comes and calls you up.
Announce the contract extension.
Yeah, extend that contract now. Charlie, yeah, what's your thoughts? Jumping back to obviously your original point, what do you make of this tournament that they've set up? Is it a great idea?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, like I say, the connotations of who's involved becomes a little bit more of a nuanced conversation. But I think if you look, it's a great idea. Someone was bound to do it, I think, whether it was a football club or a separate organisation. And I think the fact that it's a football club and a club like Leyton Orient, I think it's going to be a little less cynical, if that makes sense. That there's going to be less of that corporate involvement. I mean, there will be, but if it's being run by some social media guys in East London, I can't expect it to be too over the top Sky Sports News style. Although I'm sure Jim White will find a way to be involved.
I mean, this is where he makes his money, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there'll be a transfer deadline day or something. They'll find some way. But I think it's just going to act as a catalyst, isn't it? Once this is finished, and if football isn't back by then, then we've got a whole different conversation to have. I think they'll just keep going. I think they'll find new ways. They'll find other games. If they find that FIFA is a mess like it is this year, and that's a whole other podcast as well, that they might find other games are more productive for it. Let's say, or other ways of doing it. And I think it's just people, like they say, are forced to come up with new ideas. As a reason that a Premier League football club, instead of playing a game on a Saturday, decided they had to do noughts and crosses. And,
yeah, it certainly makes it all a lot more creative. I'm waiting for the Premier League marble run.
I tell you what, can we decide the league by a marble run? That'd be great.
Oh, that would be so funny, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't mind getting relegated because our marble came in the bottom 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can't finish any worse than where we currently are in the league table. So
take it on.
Why not? Why not? Let's chance it. Yeah, and so going back to the Football Manager point that Charlie raised about Football Manager being free, I think was it 6 days? It's going to be free for a week. What's your thoughts on that? Is that a clever move by Football Manager?
Yeah, it's a really good idea. Yeah, as it means that people not people, content creators even can cash in on that.
Yeah, and Charlie, surely in the long term that's going to convert into some good business sales, I would imagine, for Football Manager, isn't it? When as soon as you get a demo, you like a game, you're addicted to the game, you're going to want to buy the full thing, and yeah, surely.
No, for sure. And I think whilst they won't, I mean, I know a few of the people that work for Sports Interactive that make Football Manager, and I know for a fact they won't have done this for cynical reasons. They will be rewarded for being as good as they're being. They've always been very good with their community, and I think you'll see that now that clubs will have to really focus on the community, because there's a chance that if the game doesn't come back until September, people might not come back with it. And so they've got to keep people engaged. They've got to keep ahead of whatever. If someone else moves first, I mean, if you look, if other leagues start to pop up first, those casual fans that are just looking for football will probably end up looking elsewhere. I mean, if La Liga comes back earlier or for whichever, I mean, that's unlikely, but people are going to have to be more creative. And the fact that it's a good time for those digital assets now to be released, to be really acted against. And so, I mean, the fact that I don't think you'll see EA come out and go, okay, you can have the game free for a week. I don't think FIFA's going to be doing that anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely a really good move, I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of today's podcast. And I say that because I don't want to drag this on too long. We've got so many other topics that we need to discuss, and we want to bring in some different voices as well, and really, spread our football content out for this prolonged period of days, weeks, and potentially even months without football being shown.
Yeah.
If you have any ideas listening in, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. Let us know any of your thoughts on anything we've discussed so far. But yeah, please let us know if you have any ideas, because the more ideas, the better the content. Hopefully, we can produce for you guys to enjoy. And that sort of brings us to the end of today's episode. Before we finish and we wrap up formally, let's start with the social media handle shout out. So let's go with SA first. How can anyone listening in follow you on social media?
My social media is Agboye SCLC.
And that's on Twitter, yeah?
Yes.
Perfect.
And Charlie, how can someone follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, mostly whinging about Brighton and Football Manager, at Charlie Pumfrey, nice and easy.
Easy stuff. And you can follow me on Twitter too, at DannyCook1996. Not much. I don't tweet that often, actually. I did a little review the other day. I don't tweet that often.
We need
more content. I need more content. Lots of Norwich retweets, though, so Delia would be pleased. Anyway, that's the end of today's show. So thank you very much for your time, gents. I appreciate your views and your verdicts, and look forward to future episodes with you both.
Thank you very much for having us, Danny.
No problem.
Thank you for having me as well.
No problem, SA. Okay, and that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for your time, and goodbye.